President Biden's age has been a constant worry for Democrats and even his own re-election campaign. A new poll found that 77% of overall adults think President Biden is too old to serve another four-year term. Broken down by party, 69% of Democrats held the same viewpoint. They were joined by, not a huge surprise, 89% of Republicans. That same poll found that 26% of adults associated President Biden with the words old, outdated, aging, and elderly. Well, that's fun. 15% described him as slow, confused, and bumbling, and 6% called him corrupt, criminal, and crooked. Lovely alliteration there. Now the White House is deflecting questions regarding the new poll. Watch this.
A new AP poll asked Americans an open-ended question on their thoughts on the president, and the most common response has to do with his age, how old he is, and the oldest president in history. Does the White House have additional plans to demonstrate that he can continue to, do the job at his advanced age and kind of allay some of those concerns?
I mean, look. I appreciate the question. I get it often, as you know, what I would say, and I've said this many times, and many of my colleagues have said this, the president says this, if you watch him, if you've seen what he's done the last 2 years, this is a president has had a historic administration in just 2 years. If you look at the more than 13.5 million jobs that he's been able to create, if you look at how he's been able to turn the economy around so that it works for middle-class Americans, if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act and what it's going to do to really help Americans as it relates to healthcare, as it relates to utility bills, if you think about the CHIPS and Science, I mean, this is a president who has taken historic actions.
Lawrence, is this a skit? Because so everything that she's saying, she's like, I get asked about this a lot. It's like, I wonder why, because a vast majority of people think the president is too old. But she also talks about the economy, and this is where the propaganda comes in, and this is the disconnect. 38% of Americans say that the economy is their top issue. It is the number one issue. 70% of respondents on our Fox News poll say the country is headed in the wrong direction.
Halfway through her response, it was just mute for me. Like, her mouth was moving, but I could not understand the words that were coming out of her mouth.
Historic, Lawrence. It's
right,
historic.
Very historic. The American people are really feeling it. Look, traditionally, at 29 years old, he was elected. He's always been wrong on the issue. 100 years ago. I wasn't even born. He's always been wrong on the issues, but now he's gone. And I think that's what the American people are seeing right now. He used to be just Joe with the gaffes, but it was acceptable for the Democrats. He was known as one of the greatest retail politicians. If you wanted someone to go and get a crowd going, he was the guy. That was his asset to the Democratic Party. Now that is gone. And all of his other unfortunate errors that he's been making are only highlighted more. So the one asset, and age affects everyone differently, the one asset that Joe Biden had is no longer there for him. And so now they have nothing to run with him on, because at least you had a personality and say the staff could come up with the legislation. But now the person can't sell what the staff is doing. And now the White House is in a predicament. They got away with this during the last election because he was in the basement, and they used the pandemic as cover, which begs the question, why are they bringing more pandemic measures back for the American people to see? Are they planning on doing that same strategy again?
Yes. No, they want the control, but it's problematic for the president because not only do people, and, Karine Jean-Pierre is like, just watch him. We watch him. We see what he's doing. It's like, that's the problem. Everyone watches him, Molly. They see what he's doing. They see his gaffes. But not only that, they also see that he is corrupt, that he appears to be the head of this organized crime family that has been on the grift for years.
Right. I mean, age is an issue. He's the oldest president. We see him shuffling. We see him not remember names. That is not great for him, but I don't think that's actually his big problem. I think it's all of these other things. You mentioned, Lawrence, in the 2020 campaign, the media basically ran that campaign while he sat in the basement. They used COVID to attack the Trump administration, something that looks very different now that people realize, like, wow, a lot of those pandemic responses were ridiculous. So, they would get mad when Trump would say, like, I'm not sure we need to be this crazy. That looks a lot different now. Also looking different, the Ukraine impeachment against President Trump, where Donald Trump alleged that there was corruption in Ukraine involving the Biden family. That's not really in dispute now. We have this on the record. There was this amazing interview this weekend with Brian Kilmeade, Victor Shokin, talking openly about how, yes, he was investigating Burisma. Burisma was paying the Bidens to get rid of that, and Joe Biden was able to get rid of that. All these issues look very different if there's the same matchup in 2024 than they did in 2020.
All right. Well, it's going to be a different matchup for voters because, you can take a look at some of this polling. They're having a hard time. 87% of respondents are having a hard time paying for groceries. 85% are having a hard time paying for gas. 81% find it difficult to pay for basic utilities.
Yeah, those are the numbers right there. And one number that I found really compelling in our research today, 2/3 of parents with families, they're just living paycheck to paycheck. You can listen to what's coming out of the White House about inflation, but the reality is it still stings. It's an anomaly what's going on with the numbers now. They look like they're diving, but in fact, they're still building on the huge gains from last year, right? We saw 40-year highs in prices at the grocery store for oil and gas across the board in the economy. But now it's continuing. And Biden's saying, but it's coming down. The growth is coming down, but we still have the growth. People can't afford things. Parents can't afford diapers for their kids.
Yeah, and, forget college. So, Emily, what happens now? This is what we want to know, because we're watching all of this. We're seeing his numbers tank, not just with Republicans, not just with independents, but Democrats as well. Does another establishment Democrat get into the race, because it seems like that window is closing?
Well, certainly people like Gavin Newsom are waiting hungrily for that opportunity. I think they're probably waiting, frankly, for the green light from the establishment proper, because that's what we've all been subjected to for so long, is the establishment machine, of which Biden and Obama, and likely in the future Newsom, have been a byproduct. I think we will all be obviously worse for the wear if it's Kamala, but that remains to be seen as they're sorting out their own chess match. I mean, the reality is, these statistics are absolutely frightening. So that means at Thanksgiving, when we're sitting on a table of 10, let's say, with our extended relatives, like almost 9 out of us will have had issues and difficulty with gas getting there, paying for the grocery bills for that meal, utilities, living paycheck to paycheck, 8 out of 10 dipping into their savings. It is so offensive that KJP and this White House try to whitewash it all and say everything's amazing and it's historic. Historic in its failures. That's what it's historic for. We will see a change in 2024.
Yeah, it's like watching your house burn down and KJP's going, you guys, let's roast marshmallows. It's like, no, where's the urgency?
Hey, everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.